Ah, the Wings album. The edgy, artsy, aesthetic album that immediately sparked much controversy and fan theories among the K-pop community. I remember that my bestie Rachel introduced me to the album, and not too long afterward, I remember listening to pretty much every song in it. There were some I liked and some I didn't, but Jin's Awake is one of my favorite, if not my number one favorite song on that whole album. It, like other songs on the album, got its fair share of fan analyses and theories regarding the lyrics and the music video. However, I don't really remember anyone doing a more musical analysis of the song, so I'm going to attempt to do that today. Let's cue the intro. Alright, so before I begin, I should mention that my Korean pronunciation is shit. It is the legit manure that you see on the ground whenever you go to the ranch. Um, so I apologize for any terrible Korean pronunciation and for any Korean viewers out there wincing at my pronunciation as well. Anyway, I should also mention that I don't know if my interpretation of Jin's song completely coincides with his intentions, though I I tend to believe in a more post-structuralist view of art. Post-structuralism is, well, it's really a literary movement, but it emphasizes the subjectivity of words. I mean, words carry meaning, but that meaning is fluid among individuals. So what really matters isn't necessarily the author's intentions, but what we interpret from the writing. And yes, the author's intentions are important. They're not necessarily invalid, but because of the subjectivity of meaning, sometimes that the real intention of the author will never really be truly understood, I think. Anyway, with that said, let's begin. So, Jin's Awake is a mature and thoughtful song that not only uses its lyrics to convey a message, but it also uses its music to convey it as well. More importantly, the interplay between the lyrics and the music is paramount in the song. Essentially, Jin's Awake maximizes the interaction between music and lyrics to create the perfect musical atmosphere to convey the themes of acceptance and truth. For example, the song begins with a heavily orchestrated introduction. This orchestra plays harmonies that remind me of the giant swells of the late Romantic period composer Sergei Rachmaninoff. And Sergei Rachmaninoff composed in a time when music was transitioning, or shall I say, maturing from a period of Romanticism to modernism. And while I'm unsure if Jin actually knew this to begin with, I find that it definitely contributes to the mature mood of the song. Then after the introduction, the orchestration becomes lighter, with just a piano and Jin's voice. The lack of instrumentals makes the song sound more pure and intimate. In fact, I find that in most music, if you want to make a piece sound more raw and pure, you either make the orchestration light, or if you have a very large orchestra, compose in a way that makes the orchestra sound smaller than it actually is. Take, for example, the K-pop song "Wildflower" by Park Hyo-shin. Not the orchestral version, but this one. There'll be a link in the video. The video contains just his singing and a piano in the background, and that lack of orchestra essentially strips the song naked, showing Hyo-shin's emotions at their most intimate. The light orchestration here in Jin's song has the same effect. Then there's the verses. Notice how the first two verses consist of short phrases followed by a pause. The pauses are there on purpose. They allow the listener to think, even just for a brief moment, about the previous verse. Also, these pauses can be seen as a reflection of Jin's slow yet thorough thought process as he sings his thoughtful, solemn soliloquy. Finally, the pauses reflect a certain fleetingness expressed in Jin's lyrics. Jin states that he wants to dream more, but now it's time to leave. Even the chords represent this fleeting emotion. They're major 7 chords, which can be found in many situations, but in this song they're used as sentimental chords that reflect the fleeting nature of Jin's dreams, just like in Eric Sadie's Gymnopédie. Notice how the chords are played in a way that makes them feel very temporary. That's what Jin did with his chords in his song. Anyway, the point is that the short phrases reflect the transience of Jin's dream as well as his reflective thought process. Now, before I jump to the pre-chorus and the chorus, I want to skip to the next verse because the chorus is perhaps my favorite section of the song and I want to save that for later. The second verse is more rhythmic than the first, and in good taste too. This rhythmic change reflects Jin's distress and insecurity as he continues, quote-unquote, walking and walking through the dark, end quote, wondering if he is really okay. The different pace of this verse serves to portray the anxiety and insecurity of accepting the truth and following one's destiny. It reflects how Jin is insecure about himself, always comparing himself to the 6 flowers over there, that the 6 flowers being the other members of BTS. And it's his distress, but the song is also sort of his acceptance of himself as well. And the rhythmic change reflects the distressed pattern, but the chorus ends up resolving that. So after the verses, the pre-chorus starts, and the strings start to enter the song again one by one. First, the cello comes in, and then more come in afterward. The pre-chorus is more dynamic than the first 2 verses. While there are still short phrases followed by pauses, the pauses are shorter now, and the notes follow a quicker rhythm than those of the verses. Yeah, it's my truth. It's my truth. 온통 사쳐투성이겠지. But it's my faith. It's my faith. So did you hear the cello come in first, then the piano, and then more of the string section in as they are increasing the orchestration? Did you hear that? That's what I'm talking about. Here, Jin increases the orchestration, partially to build up to the chorus, but also I feel like this more dynamic section reflects a change in the lyrics, and it has a very noble purpose. In the pre-chorus, Jin doesn't discuss how he still wants to dream anymore. Instead, he states that he's leaving the dream, and leaving the dream is his truth and his fate. I've often found myself wanting to run away from the truth only to find that I trip and fall right back into it. In the same way, the increased motion of the pre-chorus reflects the speed of falling right back into the truth, even when you want to run away. His melody reflects that fall as well. Notice how he jumps to the top of the scale. It's my... Well, more of the 5th. It's the 5th note. The 5th note of the scale. He goes up, though, and then he falls back down. It's my truth. Finally, he states that even though there will be, quote, cuts and bruises, end quote, ahead of him, he still wants to, quote, struggle and fight, end quote. He sings this phrase landing on the tonic note once more, except he doesn't descend the scale. He immediately lands on the tonic, moves up 1 pitch, and then lands back on the tonic again. Notice how he doesn't go back to the high 5th note again. He doesn't go da, but instead he goes go 싶어. He lands on that tonic note. He starts and lands on that tonic note. And this, I find, is a lot more affirmative. It shows a more affirmative look on his destiny, and it shows that he's ready to face and accept his fate, whatever that may be. Once again, he's not trying to reach for that high note anymore. He's landed on his tonic. Now this leads me to the chorus. Notice that each word of the chorus is sung for a longer period than those of the pre-chorus. Jin does this to emphasize the theme of accepting one's limitations and accepting the truth and accepting oneself and not comparing oneself to others. In the chorus, Jin realizes and accepts that maybe he can never fly, since wings are impossible to grow. And Jin uses music to further emphasize this point. When he sings "Wings are impossible," or, excuse my Korean, but "나를 단 것처럼 안 돼." Oh gosh, that was terrible. I'm so sorry. But when he says that, listen to the last notes. Did you listen to those last notes? Jin's pitch gets higher, as if he's attempting to fly, but he sings the word ande, which means no or not, signifying that flying is impossible for him. Jin uses his voice not only to convey his desires, but also to convey the reality that contradicts those desires. He wants to rise into the sky, but he knows he can't, so he sings no as his voice rises. Jin maximizes the interplay between his music and his lyrics at this very moment, and I think this is why this part is my favorite part of the song. Finally, the song leads to a short yet dynamic bridge. The orchestra has its most active melodies, and the drummer plays a steady beat at this point. Not to mention, Jin sings a repetitive yet rhythmic portion of the song. It's rhythmic because though his realization is sad, the acceptance of his truth sets him free. He can never be like the 6 flowers over there, as he says, the 6 members. But he can be happy with himself, and he can accept himself for who he is because the other members do. So this bridge can be thought of as a reflection of his desire to still struggle and fight. He still wants to be the best that he can be, still wants to fly, but he doesn't have to compare himself to others to do so, and he can still accept his own truth while still struggling to fight and still continuing his journey. And I think that's what makes this song so great. I'm going off script here, but honestly, Jin's song is so fucking beautiful. It is Jin's best work so far, I think, and the way he uses his music to express those emotions, those feelings of inadequacy, but also wanting to become better, and acceptance overall. The way he uses music to express those themes is so symbolic and so clever, and I could only hope to make something like that one day. So, Jin, if you're ever listening to this, you did good, bro. You did extremely well, and thank you for making such wonderful music. All right, that's it. Justin out.